Allen Lund Company has new offices in Ogden, Utah and Indianapolis, Indiana. Check allenlund.com to reach them.
OOIDA, representing America's truckers since 1973, presents Landline Now with your host, Mark Reddick.
Traffic congestion is a topic of interest to virtually everyone because at some point we'll all be stuck in traffic. That is, in part, why an organization called INRIX conducts a study each year titled the Global Traffic Scorecard, and the 2023 version of the study contains some fascinating information. I'll speak with Bob Piszczuk, a transportation analyst from INRIX and the author of the Global Traffic Scorecard. Also on today's program, some time back we told you about an effort in California to put speed limiters on all vehicles. Now, the bill would put speed warning devices on all new vehicles in the state. Scott Thompson will discuss that, plus local transportation ballot issues in South Carolina with our state legislative expert, Keith Goebel. But first, the news with Scott Thompson.
Thanks, Mark. Our top story today. The national average for a gallon of diesel was down for a fifth straight week last week. The Energy Information Administration says the average dipped by a nickel to $3.70 a gallon. Prices down in all 10 regions, led by the Gulf Coast, where the average was down 6.5 cents. Over the past 5 weeks, the national average has fallen more than 16 cents. Meanwhile, more of the same this week on the ProMiles.com survey. The national average Tuesday morning settling in at $3.69 a gallon. That's 3 cents lower than it was on the same day last week. Prices in all 10 regions declining on the ProMiles report as well. Seasonal factors continue to impact the spot market. Truck stop data shows that load posting volumes were down last week. So were van and flatbed rates, with reefer rates staying level. But a closer look at the data tells a different story. Brent Hutto of Truck Stop said all the things necessary for a recovery from the freight recession continue to fall in place.
C.H. Robinson, biggest mover of freight in the marketplace. They don't own a truck, but the biggest mover. And also Landstar, and also Werner, and also Knight Swift, and also Heartland are all saying things about they're seeing opportunity for growth over the next, not 6 months, because if somebody says 6 months, that means, we don't really know. If they say 3 months, and then they've got some optimism, because these big companies, they're beholden to their words, to their board, and to their shareholders. And so you look for what are they saying about things, that market, the market inflection. Derek Warner says market inflection. Knight Swift says sees signs of market stabilization. Landstar says seeing stabilizing trends. But here's where the rubber meets the road, is in the truck stop data, because we see it faster than anybody else, because we've got this live marketplace data that comes from the truck stop carriers and the brokers working together. So we see this back and forth. And this is what's been interesting, because we're seeing this trend. Even though loads were down, bringing the 2024, the market where we're sitting in today, back to 2023 levels, and given that spot loads generally go by 1% or more percent a year, this says maybe the market's soft. But hold on. This comes straight from our chief economist, Noah Perry. He said, that said, this is where it's important, rates were up, bringing 2024 above 2023. And this is where it's great, because you want to see a trend for the fourth consecutive week. In the spot market, we don't look at week over week. We look at, is it 3 or 4 weeks in a row to establish a positive trend? So that's where the hope is. We're seeing things trending that way.
More data you can use from Truck Stop, including the hottest part of the country with regard to loads and rates, tomorrow, right here on Landline Now. A federal appeals court has ruled that brokers are not responsible for crashes involving trucks they hire. It's the first decision of its kind since the Supreme Court chose not to hear a similar case that could have settled conflicting decisions in lower courts. The 11th Circuit Court of Appeals agreed with a Georgia district court that Total Quality Logistics cannot be found negligent for its hiring of a motor carrier involved in a deadly crash that occurred in Claxton, Georgia. A truck owned by Florida-based Hard to Stop made an illegal U-turn on State Route 73, blocking lanes in both directions. One person was killed. In addition to suing Hard to Stop and its driver, the lawsuit also accused Total Quality Logistics of negligence. The complaint claimed that the broker knew or should have known that the trucking company had a history of improper licensing, improper maintenance on its vehicles, and failure to have minimum insurance coverage. But both the District Court and the 11th Circuit ruled that the Federal Aviation Administration Authorization Act, also known as F4A, protects brokers from personal injury negligence claims. The ruling is the latest dealing with negligence claims against brokers and F4A. One court, however, holds an opposing view on the matter. In 2020, the Ninth Circuit determined in Miller v. C.H. Robinson that brokers can be held responsible for negligent hiring under F4A's safety exception. The decision kept C.H. Robinson on the hook in a personal injury lawsuit involving a motor carrier it hired. C.H. Robinson petitioned the Supreme Court to hear the case. It declined, and C.H. Robinson ended up settling. The U.S. Environmental Protection Agency is seeking input from the public regarding California's Advanced Clean Fleets waiver. A virtual public hearing beginning at 10 a.m. Eastern on Wednesday morning has dozens of registered speakers, and it's scheduled to last until 10 p.m. Eastern. The Advanced Clean Fleets regulation requires certain fleets to move to zero tailpipe emission trucks with a phase-in timeline. The rule from the California Air Resources Board took effect in January, but has not been enforced because the state must first obtain a waiver from the EPA before moving forward with stricter rules. Several lawsuits have been filed in an attempt to reverse them. The Owner-Operator Independent Drivers Association, which filed an amicus brief in 2022, said that California has overstepped its authority. The association is among the many organizations scheduled to speak on Wednesday. To register yourself or to get more details, you can check out our story on landline.media. $6.5 million worth of meth is staying off the streets thanks to a recent bust by border officials in Texas. It was found in a reefer trailer at the World Trade Bridge. That's according to U.S. Customs and Border Protection. Agents flagged a commercial truck for secondary inspection on August 9th. While it was supposed to be hauling flowers, agents also found more than 700 pounds of methamphetamine inside. The drugs were seized, so was a truck and trailer, and the driver is under investigation. The Owner-Operator Independent Drivers Association's Truckers for Troops program is teaming up with the Wreaths Across America program. Each year, Wreaths Across America partners with more than 300 transportation companies to haul wreaths that are placed at Arlington National Cemetery. OOIDA is selling wreaths that will ultimately make their way there. Wreath sponsorships are $17 each. With each one, OOIDA's Truckers for Troops campaign will receive $5, which goes toward care packages that are sent overseas to active troops and to veterans at home through the Veterans Community Project. National Wreaths Across America Day is December 14th this year. For more information, we've got a link at landlinenow.com. Authorities in Washington state battling a wildfire in the North Cascades are now contending with the effects of a mudslide in the area. The Washington State DOT said rainfall caused a mudslide on State Route 20 near the Okanagan-Wenatchee National Forest. That section of the North Cascades Highway has been closed since Friday due to the wildfires in the area. According to the state DOT, no detours on U.S. Forest Service roads are available. Those traveling through this area are encouraged to utilize U.S. Highway 2 and Interstate 90 for east-west travel. And finally, delays are coming to eastbound Interstate 90 in Sheridan, Wyoming. A slope failure and landslide are to blame. Crews with the Wyoming DOT will be out fixing it starting Monday, August 19th. One lane of eastbound travel will be closed and speeds will be reduced to 45 miles an hour. That's Landline Now News for today. I'm Scott Thompson.
Thanks, Scott. If a carrier, shipper, receiver, or broker tries to coerce you into violating the regulations, first document what happened, then either call 1-888-DOT-SAFT or file a complaint online to the National Consumer Complaint Database. Again, the phone number is 1-888-DOT-SAFT. Marty Ellis and OOIDA's tour truck, The Spirit of the American Trucker, are at the Sapp Brothers Truck Stop in Salt Lake City, Utah. That's located at Exit 21 off Interstate 215. Stop in, say hi to Marty, and join OOIDA for a $10 discount. Next, I'll discuss the state of traffic congestion in the United States with Bob Pishew, a transportation analyst from INRIX. And Scott Thompson will cover an effort to put speed warning devices in all vehicles with our state legislative expert, Keith Goebel. We'll be right back. I'm Mark Rettig, and this is Landline Now.
Thanks for listening. Be sure to like and subscribe. If you want more content, go to landline.media to get updated news, information, and archived editions of our show. Once again, that's landline.media.
Every year, 28 million people are trafficked globally. The Your Roads, Their Freedom campaign seeks to raise awareness in the transport industry. Truck and bus drivers, be vigilant on the roads. If you see something suspicious, text 233-733 or be free.
Truckdown.com. Whenever you have a breakdown, you need truckdown.com. 24/7 access to 40,000 verified heavy-duty repair vendors nationwide. Truckdown verified, vendor qualified. Truckdown.com.
Firestone tires are for more of everything, with more durability for more miles and more confidence in your fleet. Firestone's tested tires help fleets save with value where it matters most. Learn more at bridgestonenationalfleet.com/4moremiles.
It's tested and proven. Burn 2.1% less fuel when you balance all wheel ends with Centromatic. Call 800-523-8473 to get the OOIDA discount.
Traffic congestion is a topic that's of interest to virtually everyone because at some point we'll all be stuck somewhere in traffic. But for truckers, it's a serious impediment to their ability to earn a living. You're listening to Landline Now, and I'm your host, Mark Reddick. Welcome back to the program. The importance of congestion, its ability to inconvenience and to cost people money, is in part why an organization called INRIX, a company that provides traffic information, data, and analytics, conducts a study each year titled the Global Traffic Scorecard. The 2023 version of the study contains some fascinating information about what's going on with traffic congestion in both the United States and in other countries around the world. However, we are, of course, most concerned with the information about North America and what's going on there. To discuss what they found this year, how it compares to previous years, and what the data are telling us, I spoke recently with Bob Pishu, a transportation analyst from INRIX and the author of the Global Traffic Scorecard. I want to start by talking broadly, kind of from the 30,000 foot altitude level. How bad is traffic congestion in the United States right now?
Yeah. So the typical American driver spends about 40 hours lost to traffic in 2023. So, I mean, about a week's worth of work, plus or minus, but that's obviously depending on where you are, it could be more. So New York is, drivers in New York are more than 100 hours versus some smaller towns where people aren't losing that much time to congestion. So I think it really matters where you are in the country, in the world, and whatever, is going on locally. Now, that being said, in about half of the cities we measured, traffic is worse than 2019 pre-COVID times. In the other half, it is not. So really, again, traffic congestion is building, but depending on where you are, that may look different.
Okay. Now, I know that part of the kind of rebound in traffic congestion is probably just coming out of the pandemic, but are there other factors that your research pointed to that could indicate other causes for the increase in congestion?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. So, I mean, throughout COVID, there have been, for example, more online deliveries. So that has generated some trips, commercial trips. And that requires more freight, more trucking, those types of things. Additionally, what we've been seeing, though, is there is a lot of trip demand in the middle of the day. So people are, either adding new trips to their, daily travel schedule. They're continuing to drop kids off at school. They're continuing to go to the store in the middle of the day, whatever it may be. We are seeing quite a bit of activity throughout the midday, a little bit less activity in the morning commute. So, kind of the convergence of hybrid work, more trips being made in the middle of the day leads to, a little bit more congestion, especially as it heads into the evening peak period.
You had mentioned a lot of this depends on where you are. So I'm kind of curious, in terms of the United States, what are the worst areas that you found for traffic congestion?
Yeah, no surprise. It's the New York area. Chicago also ranks pretty high. LA, Seattle, Boston. So those very one thing kind of in common, not completely throughout all of those, is the fact that Telecommuting was big, especially on the coast. Well, that it pared back a little bit. People started commuting into the office more. And so those areas that had more telecommuting likely saw more people hitting the road, in 2023. The other thing is, though, is almost all of those, probably with the exception of Los Angeles, have very job dense downtowns. So Manhattan has a large share of the New York region's jobs. Downtown Boston has a large percentage, downtown Seattle, et cetera, versus like a Dallas or a Houston, where they only have a single digit percentage of the region's jobs, which in short, jobs are more dispersed in some areas and more heavily concentrated in others, like New York. And what we're seeing is those heavily concentrated in downtown are still seeing quite a bit of congestion.
Is this simply a matter that the more densely populated an urban area is, the more likely we are to have that congestion?
Yeah, but so it's been found that in general, density results in people traveling shorter distances, right? And so that would reduce the amount of driving or walking, versus a longer distance. Sorry, I meant in terms of distance for walking. More people walk in dense areas. But however, let's say if driving was cut by a third, but you double the people, you still end up with more traffic congestion because of that increase in density is greater than the loss in travel. So yes, you tend to see that. Also, road space is a little bit more at a premium in dense areas, so you don't see as much road expansion. The cost of right-of-way and construction in dense urban areas is a lot more costly than, say, in rural areas, where land is much less expensive. So all that infrastructure, too, when you get into, really dense cities, costs a lot more. So it tends to play catch up a little bit more as well.
Let's talk a little bit about the effect on individuals. How much time on average is each individual driver losing each year to traffic congestion, and how much is that costing them financially?
Yeah, so the typical U.S. driver, I mentioned about 40 hours. It's 42 hours lost due to traffic congestion in 2023. And that equates to a little more than $700 in lost time. So, and again, depending on where you are, if, some areas are very high in household income, that time lost may be a lot more for that area versus others. So this is an average. But across the country, it's an average that we think is pretty conservative considering how much we assign to each hour. But across the U.S., that's more than $70 billion in lost time due to traffic congestion. So it's a sizable amount. It increases. That doesn't even include the increase to the cost of goods from trucking delays and delivery delays and all of that. So we feel that 70 billion is really a conservative number, and it's likely to be much higher.
You mentioned one of the things that's kind of a trend is things are kind of moving out because areas outside of downtowns tend to have cheaper land. And in some areas, suburbs are developing farther and farther from urban cores. I've read quite a bit about what they call edge cities, where you have these large office areas way out in the suburbs. To what extent does the amount of time spent in traffic congestion represent those greater distances to those edge cities or those office areas in suburban land?
Yeah.
Or is there increased driving distance at all because of that?
Yeah, you've kind of got an interesting scenario there. On one hand, we see this in West Coast cities and some East Coast cities. They actually have urban growth boundaries, which don't allow development outside of a boundary. You typically see this in Seattle, Portland, San Francisco, and those areas have bad traffic. So, with all of that growth concentrated in one area, again in Seattle, like in the Seattle example or San Francisco, you've got a high percentage of people commuting to downtown in a very dense urban area. You're going to see lots of traffic. In some areas where they don't have those boundaries, let's say Houston, the travel patterns are far more dispersed and more akin to like throwing pickup sticks on a map. They kind of go everywhere. So sometimes these edge cities, they may actually go against traffic because they're heading out of the main city, and actually creating an employment base and destination, out there. So that may actually work to reduce congestion a little bit, at least for the drivers that are traveling that route versus going into the city. So you kind of see there's a double-edged sword there.
You had talked a little bit earlier about the fact that we're seeing more midday traffic, that it's not just simply the traditional rush hours of morning and evening. Is that really the only time of day you're seeing kind of a variation from that traditional rush hour? Or are there other times of day where congestion is cranking up that really don't fit the traditional pattern?
Well, so congestion is cranking up during that midday period, which then, if not alleviated, continues on into that evening peak and can make congestion more severe at that typical 5 o'clock rush hour because the traffic hadn't had a chance to abate yet or to reduce before hitting another peak. But actually, there's a switch in the other direction. We're seeing far fewer trips being made in the morning. And so while the morning peak is still kind of there, I mean, people are still experiencing traffic congestion on their way to work, on their way to school. There's less of it in general in the morning. So we've sort of seen travel in that morning commute kind of shift more to 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock, which kind of, again, indicates more of a hybrid work scenario, people making, quote, discretionary trips. So trips to laundromats and stores and gas stations. And so those are all likely combining to increase the number of trips being made during the middle of the day.
Okay. One of the other things I was looking through the study results that they talked about in there, that you talked about in there, I should say, is the level of congestion on different days of the week. Now, obviously, you would expect weekends to be lighter and weekdays to be worse, but were there individual weekdays when congestion was worse, and why do you think that is?
Yeah, so we took a look at trips to downtown specifically. There's been a lot of discussion in the news about downtowns and their revitalization after COVID. Some downtowns have seen a lot of growth. We've seen like downtown Nashville, Miami has a lot, has had a very big tourism season. So we see some downtowns in general, ones with a little bit more nightlife. The highest percentage of trips throughout the week is actually made on Friday. Now that's commuting trips, that's recreational trips, that's going out to dinner trips. And so at least to downtowns, Friday, just by a percentage point, is a lot higher than the next day, Thursday.
Once again, I've been talking with Bob Pishu, a transportation analyst from INRIX and the author of the Global Traffic Scorecard. After a short commercial break, we'll continue our conversation with Pishu, including how property values can be an indicator for whether major metro downtown areas are struggling, something that would likely reduce congestion, as well as how much your location plays into the level of traffic congestion you face. We'll be back in just a moment. I'm Mark Reddick, and this is Landline Now.
Today's rising costs affect everyone. Replace your harmonic damper with a genuine Vibertech TVD viscous damper to prevent costly repairs and downtime. Keep your money in your pocket and your truck on the road with Vibertech TVD. Recommended replacement at 500,000 miles or 15,000 hours.
Ready to make more money? Use a better load board. For a limited time, get 50% off Truckstop Load Board Pro. Just go to truckstop.com/go and enter promo code READY2024 when you purchase Load Board Pro.
Are you tired of the IRS following you around like a dark cloud? Call 888-557-4020 and get your life back.
Landline Now. Welcome back. Before the break, I was talking with Bob Pishu, a transportation analyst from INRIX and the author of the Global Traffic Scorecard. We were discussing the level of traffic congestion in large city downtowns on different days of the week and what sorts of things have been driving that congestion. We also got into several aspects of how traffic congestion could affect the trucking industry, and likewise, how changes to trucking over the past couple of decades may have influenced the level of traffic congestion. We now rejoin that conversation in progress.
Some downtowns have tended to struggle. San Francisco's downtown has struggled a bit. Seattle has had some issues with it. You can kind of see it in the property values of these commercial buildings. They're down pretty significantly due to largely due to the fact that fewer people are coming downtown. So some downtowns have fared a lot differently than others. And I think that that's the main takeaway from this study, is that it really matters where you are. I mean, downtown New York is a different beast than downtown Detroit, Dallas, Omaha, Nebraska. It really just depends on where you are. And what you're seeing may look very similar to pre-COVID times, or it may look a lot different. You may be seeing congestion at different times of the day. Downtown may look a little bit different. And so that's the main takeaway from this report.
I know that you focused mainly on urban highways, obviously, because that's where the greatest congestion is and the greatest density that affects that. But obviously, for our audience, which is made up of commercial truck drivers, the rural highways are also very important. And I've been reading about more states that are increasing the capacity of roads in rural areas. And a good example is right outside our building here, Interstate 70 in Missouri, Kansas City to St. Louis. They're looking at expanding that to 3 lanes each direction, which currently is only the case within the urban areas on either side of the state. So I'm wondering, did you take a look at the rural roads in addition to the urban areas, and what sort of things did you find there in terms of the level of congestion?
We include rural roads in our calculation. Again, this is a commuting scorecard, so it's a little bit different. It tends not, we looked at 295 cities in the U.S., so it does pick up, big cities and smaller cities. And so there it will likely pick up, a lot of those rural roads. What I will say, though, is, those rural roads are the key to moving stuff all over the country. And I know, even in my backyard, we're building new interchanges, new overpasses, but it is more on the rural side versus the, as soon as you get into a city, those freeway to freeway connections, actually, even out where there aren't huge cities, even those freeway to freeway interchanges were just simply not built to modern traffic levels. And so you tend to see bottlenecks even on rural roads where key interchanges exist because, maybe they're just one lane, or they just can't simply handle the level of traffic that they were designed for. And so while our scorecard does take that into account, to a certain level, it doesn't address the congestion problem directly for those rural highways. But we know that there are, huge demands being made on those rural highways to get goods to and from port, to get, agriculture moving, to connect up to, rail facilities and things like that. So, that is a topic that we're continuing to look at because of its importance to the economy of the country.
I want to kind of run a scenario by you here. And I didn't see that you really broke out the level of congestion caused by commercial traffic as opposed to just passenger vehicles. But over the past couple of decades, there's been significant changes in trucking regulation. And one of the effects of that is kind of twofold. First of all, you have a lot greater concentration of truckers driving during the day. You have a lot fewer driving at night when maybe they traditionally, before that, would have driven. But the other thing is that due to the changes in the hours of service regulations, we've heard anecdotally from a lot of truckers that in the past, they might have waited out rush hour, just taken a quick rest period and waited for rush hour to clear and then gone through metros. And now, due to the way the regulations are configured, they don't feel they have that choice anymore. They just go ahead and go through. Did you see any patterns in commercial traffic that are contributing to this congestion? And did you look into whether those are some of the causes, or are there other causes that you saw?
Yeah, that's an excellent point. I think I haven't, we did not for this study, but I mean, that's a very interesting take, right? Because, I mean, you can definitely see how that affects congestion, right? I mean, there are a lot of places in urban areas too where you increase the number of trucks on a decent grade or a hill, and there's need for hill climbing lanes and all of that kind of stuff because of that exact issue that you're talking about, with more trucks, for lack of a better term, being forced to travel at certain times. That's definitely going to exacerbate congestion. And so, and our infrastructure hasn't adapted to that, or if it can. So that's an excellent point. I haven't looked into that cause directly. Generally, we're looking at recurring congestion, simple, general travel demand exceeding the road capacity of freeways and arterials and city streets. But obviously, that's a good point that you brought up as a reason why there is congestion. There's also road incidents and, which cause a ton of congestion. Depending on where you are, weather definitely plays a factor. Traffic signal timing plays a factor. When you get into the city, managing the curb. So for those kind of last mile deliveries, that's curb allocation and how cities are going about that could be an issue, whether you're dropping off people or goods or performing services. That can definitely lead to increases in congestion as well. So while there are a lot of causes, that one, I wouldn't be surprised if that also contributes to traffic congestion a bit.
Something else that I've been reading about over the past couple of years, and again, I didn't see that you covered this in your report, but I'm curious if you have looked into it or if this is something that you're considering looking into, and that is solving congestion. The traditional idea, and again, looking at Interstate 70 right outside the building where I am, is you just add more capacity. But there's some people, and especially at the federal level, who have said that basically no matter how much capacity you build, it just seems that the traffic grows to fill it. Is this a problem that government can build their way out of, or is that assumption that some have made that adding capacity doesn't really help? Is that true? What's kind of your view on that?
Well, I think it's clear. I think it has to be delineated a little bit. So adding more lanes accommodates more traffic, that people, cars, foot traffic, traffic in that sense of the word. But it doesn't necessarily mean more traffic congestion. And that's what we're really trying to focus on here is congestion, not just traffic, right? So a grocery store, foot traffic is a good thing if you own a retail store. So traffic is good. People standing in lines for 30 minutes to get their goods, not good. That causes people to leave. So we're really focused on the congestion part of it. And I think in some areas, yeah, I mean, building lanes works to accommodate the increase in traffic. And I think it does in a lot of other areas. But as mentioned before, I don't know if you could really eliminate or solve congestion, or that we'd want to, because it would just be so costly. I mean, adding a whole new freeway in New York probably would be in the tens of billions of dollars, if not more. So it's really, are the costs worth, the benefits? Does that? And a lot of times it's, like I said, fixing those freeway to freeway interchanges, kind of freeing up those classic bottlenecks. I think strategically adding capacity in a lot of these places that are kind of resistant to adding capacity because they think it leads to sprawl and bad for the environment and what have you. But strategically adding capacity, and like I mentioned before, like maybe a hill climbing lane here. I can think of one at home that is notorious that, truckers take, which they have to. And it's kind of the road is under capacity and you have, pretty decent hills to climb. Well, that to me just seems, right for a hill climbing lane or an auxiliary lane here. We're not talking about a lot of mileage. So I think that is a strategy. Also, involving other parties too. So involving the private sector a bit more. We see a lot of that in Texas, some in California, some in other states, about public-private partnerships. And, that it's a mixed bag depending on which group you talk to, whether they like them or they don't like them. But that's another avenue to go through to get some of this infrastructure built. We see, some freeways being built that way, the Port of Miami tunnel. Bringing in these financing mechanisms can help get some infrastructure built.
Okay. Well, that's all I have, Bob. I'm curious, are there other figures from your study that stand out to you, or anything else that you want to add to what we've talked about?
Well, no, since, this is, a commercial podcast, truckers listen to this. Yeah, this did not take into account the cost of goods being delivered late, all of that stuff, which we know just increases prices at the grocery store, increases the cost of goods across the board. And so it's, while I say that's $70 billion, the price is likely much higher when you consider the delays to goods and services being moved around this country. So, and sitting in queues at ports and, all of the fun stuff, trying to find truck parking, all of that stuff are big issues that definitely need some attention.
Very cool. Well, thank you very much for your time and for all the information. Very enjoyable conversation, and appreciate it very much.
Yeah, thank you. Have a good day.
I've been talking with Bob Pishew, a transportation analyst from INRIX and the author of the Global Traffic Scorecard. You can learn more about the INRIX 2023 Global Traffic Scorecard or download a copy at the company's website, INRIX.com. Again, that website is INRIX.com. We'll have that link at our website, LandlineNow.com. Just click on the photo or headline at the top of the page and then scroll down. That's where we put all the website links, email addresses, and phone numbers we mention here on the program. Again, that's at our website, LandlineNow.com. Meanwhile, you can keep track of activity concerning traffic congestion and attempts to alleviate it by going to the website landline.media. Again, that website is landline.media. And if you want to get involved in government efforts to address this and other issues, you can do that by using the website fightingfortruckers.com. We'll be back in a moment with more news and information. Please stay with us through a short commercial break. I'm Mark Reddick, and this is Landline Now.
Penske owns and operates some of the best-maintained vehicles on the planet. Our used trucks come with a 5-year maintenance report and pre-sale inspection. So if you're in the market for a top-quality pre-owned truck, look no further. Search our inventory today at PenskeUsedTrucks.com.
Control your toll costs and eliminate tolling headaches with Prepass Tolls. Prepass Tolls means toll volume discounts. Just one invoice for all tolls and fewer violations. Call 877-878-5970 or go to prepass.com.
Since you started, what you've loved about trucking is the freedom. Heading out on your favorite route, a good driving song, and thinking about truck insurance. Well, maybe not that last one. That's why we're here. At OOIDA, we have a full range of truck insurance products, expert advice, and great customer service, helping you get the right coverage for your operation. Go to OOIDA.com, because your job is to drive. Our job is to help with everything else.
And we're back. California flirts with another mandate, while South Carolina will give voters a chance to decide whether they want to give more money to transportation projects. It's time for our weekly state legislative update, and that means Keith Goebel of Landline Magazine is here. Keith, how we doing?
Scott, doing all right. How you doing? You ready for football yet?
I am ready for football.
There you go.
We got preseason going on right now, but
it's a long season.
Doesn't scratch the itch quite yet. But yes, I'm ready.
If you play for the full amount of time, if your team is playing the full amount of time, it is a very long season.
Spoken like a true Chiefs fan who regularly plays into February. A subtle dig there, but we'll move on. Let's start with California, the state that houses my favorite team.
Yeah.
If this bill makes it into law, it would impose a new mandate on new cars and trucks in the state. Walk us through here what's being considered.
Yeah, if we're talking about favorites, as far as topics go, speed is one of my favorite topics when it comes to legislation. Not that I'm in favor of, just the faster the better, that sort of thing, but the topic. And in California, hey, we know that trucks have as much as a 15-mile-per-hour speed limit differential. This legislation in California isn't going to change that, but it would potentially change the ability of at least some folks to drive in excess of 10 miles per hour over the posted speed. And this is a bill that we've talked about here for quite a bit this year, as it's made its way through the State House. Whenever we've talked about something quite a bit, it's a pretty good indicator that legislation has continued to move on. But yes, this bill, initially it called for mandating that cars, trucks, buses manufactured and sold in the state of California would come equipped with speed governors. Essentially, how that would work is the technology would be able to, it would know where a vehicle is, and based off of what the speed limit is on that roadway, would prohibit the vehicle from traveling in excess of 10 miles per hour over the posted speed. As it was introduced, that's what it called for. And through the months, we've talked about it.
Changed a bit, yep.
Not a lot of folks were happy about that, had some concerns about it. So, yeah, the bill sponsor amended his own bill there in the Senate to drop the requirement for the speed governor and instead having a passive, intelligent speed assistance device.
It just rolls off the tongue.
Yeah, I got to say it slowly there because it's just like, what the heck is that?
Yeah, and what is it? Yeah.
But anyway, essentially what it is for, as it was amended, still requiring cars and trucks and buses there in California to, and folks who have newer vehicles know exactly what I'm talking about here, is what this legislation would do as amended is if you exceed the posted speed limit by more than 10 miles per hour, you would get a audio heads up or a visual a visual heads up that you're exceeding the posted speed. Kind of like for me, I know I've got a vehicle that if you veer out of your lane or if you do it without turning your turn signal on, you will get a little bit of resistance from the vehicle, but you'll also You could have it set up for a chime or on your dash. It may light up, like go into like a red indicator instead of a green indicator if you're veering out of your lane. So essentially, as it's been amended, that's what that bill would do for drivers who exceed the posted speed by more than 10 miles per hour each time that they do that. So like if you go up to 11 miles per hour over the posted speed limit, you would get that indicator. And so you slow down, you react, and you go down to 10 miles per hour over the posted speed limit. And then a moment later, you go up 11, 12 miles per hour over the posted speed limit, it would go off again.
Mm-hmm.
But that's how the bill has been amended. Worth pointing out, as it's continued to move forward, the provision that included large trucks in this has also been removed, exceeding 8,500 pounds, trucks exceeding 8,500 pounds. That's been dropped. So that concern about having that applied for large vehicles.
Yeah.
Worth mentioning, I mean, this bill has continued to change. Although this truck provision has been removed, it is headed to the assembly floor. This is a Senate bill. It's headed to the assembly floor. If the assembly approves it with all these changes, it would then head back to the Senate, where the Senate would have to sign off on not having trucks included in this. When the Senate last had it, trucks were included. Now trucks are not. So
could be a sticking point, maybe.
Potentially. Yeah. I mean, we could run into a situation where trucks get added back into it.
Yeah.
And then it has to go back to the assembly. So they're running out of time, which might be a good thing as far as just all goes.
Yeah.
But definitely worth continuing to keep an eye on.
Yeah, it sounds like something, if they don't get it done this time, we may very well see it again during the next session there in California.
Certainly. This will not go away.
Yeah,
that is for sure.
So we'll be talking about it again one way or another. Let's shift gears here real quick to South Carolina. Election Day, November. I think we all know that by now. There in South Carolina, we've got voters in 5 counties that are going to be asked if they want to basically pay more to fund transportation projects in those counties. Walk us through the push here, what's at stake, what people are being asked, and what it means.
Yeah, there are multiple states around the country that I would say every 2 years, maybe every 4 years, it's cyclical. You have locations that put questions on their ballot to approve certain tax fee increases, renew fee tax increases. South Carolina is among them, essentially. We've got a handful of the state's largest counties that are having this fall transportation-related tax questions on their ballot, whether it is to renew or to implement these new taxes. Essentially, there are like 4 of the 5 largest counties that we're covering in this. They're wanting to approve a 1% transportation tax. There's another county where it's a 0.5%. The half one is in Charleston County, but elsewhere like Greenville County, Richland County, Anderson County, Beaufort County, they're looking to have 1% transportation sales taxes. Worth pointing out that in a couple of these counties, like Beaufort County being one of them, and the other one, Greenville County, purchasing fuel is exempt from this transportation tax, which is interesting because it's like, there are certain exceptions put in for stuff like groceries or maybe pharmaceutical goods. But you wouldn't think if you're going to have a tax that's going to benefit transportation that you would exclude fuel. But, I mean, there is a state fuel tax.
Yeah.
But anyway, this is money that would not be going for purposes around the state. It would be kept there in the county. And as we pointed out, I mean, these are 5 of the largest counties in the state, so a lot of work that could be done.
Yeah, I'm always interested in when these, ballot questions come up. It seems like, and maybe you can correct me if I'm wrong here, but it seems like they pass more often than they don't pass. There is an appetite out there for people to pay for transportation. for the most part, it seems like.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, obviously, these are transportation taxes. We're obviously where the money's going for transportation, but it's taxes that are collected on everyone in the county.
Right.
So obviously, getting those from visitors, and you have some nice areas in the state where visitors will want to travel to. Obviously, benefiting from those out of towners.
And we'll leave it there. Keith, we appreciate it. We'll talk to you again next time.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
And that's our show for today. We thank you for listening. We're back tomorrow with another one. So until next time, take care.
Thanks for listening. Be sure to like and subscribe. If you want more content, go to landline.media to get updated news, information, and archived editions of our show. Once again, that's landline.media.
Capital Reman is your leading source for quality remanufactured engines and components. Capital Reman stands ready to serve all OOIDA members to help reduce costly engine repairs or replacement. Visit capitalreman.com today and use code OOIDA10 to save.
ULSD is hurting your engine. Fight back with Howe's Diesel Defender. Get the most powerful cleaning and maximum lubricity to protect and extend the life of your entire system. At a guaranteed increase in fuel economy, and you can't go wrong with Howe's.
Dispatch, I picked up that load of steel, so I'm ready to roll.
Sounds good. Remember, we're getting paid by weight, so make sure to use a CAT scale.
I wouldn't weigh anywhere else.
Forget misaccuracy when you're truck on a CAT scale.
I'm a dad,
a son,
a husband,
wife.
I'm a writer,
photographer.
I farm.
I'm a veteran.
I love old cars, fishing,
my kids,
chrome, and I am
a
professional truck driver.
And together we are OOIDA.
OOIDA was founded by truckers to stand up and speak on behalf of truckers. We've done that by combining the individual voices of our members into a single, powerful voice. Protecting your interests, defending your rights.
Join us!
Make your voice heard. Join OOIDA, the Owner-Operator Independent Drivers Association. Call 1-800-444-5791 or visit OOIDA.com.